As the most popular, profitable superhero in the world, look it up. Spider-Man has had a lot of versions throughout his history. Plenty of them slip through the cracks. These include some good ones, some bad ones, and some crazy ones. Want to know what made our list? Hang tight and keep watching. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and then gently ring the bell to join the notification squad.
There's only one genuine article.
You mean Peter Parker?
Yeah. No, this guy.
He's my biggest fan.
Cannibal SpiderMan. We think that everyone here knows of, or at least is vaguely familiar with the Marvel Zombies version of Spider-Man. You know, the one who ate Galactus. But there's actually a second flesh-eating Peter Parker. In the Punisher vs. the Marvel Universe, we see an Earth that has been overrun by cannibals. We're talking the Avengers, the supervillains, and yes, even Spider-Man. Spider-Man may be the most important one in the whole story. Spider-Man was in fact the first hero to be infected with this plague, eating the Rhino after a battle that took place at center ice of a New York Rangers game. Beats the heck out of a hockey game, eh? We also suppose it makes sense that Peter decided to eat Rhino first out of all his villains. Not like he's gonna chow down on a guy made of sand, you know? Not in his right state of mind, this Parker takes control of a sector of New York along with his cohorts Black Widow, the Scorpion, and Deadpool. He persuades the Punisher, one of the few remaining healthy humans, to bring him Mary Jane, who's been captured by Kingpin. Punisher obliges and ends Parker's life by putting a bullet in his head.
Oh, it's so simple. That was cool.
What the hell is this?
Webbing that I developed myself. I don't think you really want to know.
Come on, let me go.
Megalomaniacal SpiderMan. What happens when you make Spider-Man a complete a-hole? We all know how important Uncle Ben is to Peter Parker. Okay, well, Spider-Man Homecoming didn't show that, but that's besides the point. It stands to reason that if Spider-Man's father figure were to be a completely terrible person, Peter might not have turned out the way he did. That's what Peter Bagg decided to explore in 2002's Megalomaniacal SpiderMan. In this reality, Uncle Ben isn't the sweet man we know and love, but a scumbag who owes a large gambling debt to his killer. Ben pulls a gun on the debt collector first, but isn't quick enough. Finding out the true nature of his uncle causes Peter to become a corporate raider and creates Spider-Man Incorporated. Why did he become such a corporate monster? He read too much Ayn Rand. There's your Steve Ditko reference for you. He also buys the Daily Bugle, treats Jameson like garbage, and is generally a psychotic and selfish douche. And you thought emo Peter Parker from Spider-Man 3 was bad. Somehow, this version of Peter Parker also manages to marry Gwen Stacy despite his horrible personality. Thank God MJ is smart enough to stay away from this cretin.
Oh, I got the thing on the thing. What do I win?
You!
I win me? That makes no sense.
Hostess Spider-Man. Quick, an army of supervillains are at your doorstep, and you have to equip yourself with one item to defend yourself. What do you choose? Well, we know what we choose. Delicious Hostess desserts, of course. Yes, amazingly enough, this exists, and it is beautiful. During the 1970s and 1980s, the company Hostess ran a series of insane and delightfully innocent ads in the pages of comic books. The ads featured superheroes saving the day in a variety of ways, but all of them involving Hostess products. Twinkies, fruit pies, and others all saved the city from evil. Being Marvel's flagship character, you better believe Spidey got in on this shameless promotion. Some of Spidey's adventures in this universe include the following: stuffing a cupcake in a boxing referee's mouth, throwing Twinkies at a crazed kung fu lady, and distracting an obsessive stalker with Twinkies. This version of Spider-Man doesn't have a happy ending. We mean, he is Peter Parker after all. In the Spider-Verse event, he rushes to catch a date with Mary Jane, and the villain Morlun attacks him. Knowing exactly what to do, Peter flings some fruit pies at him. Too bad Morlun only wanted Parker pies, as he quickly drains his life away. Curse you, Dan Slott! Why can't we have nice things?
Hey, that's my spot. You're sitting on my gargoyle. Move it.
Excuse me?
What are you even doing here?
I'm looking seriously out over the city.
Spider-Man Fantastic 5. One of Marvel Comics' best ideas ever, the What If series of comics proposed a simple but brilliant idea. Take a story that happened already and spin it off in a different direction for one issue. In the very first issue of this series back in 1977, they looked back at Amazing Spider-Man #1 and imagined if Peter Parker joined the Fantastic Four. Instead of storming out when he hears there's no salary for being in the group, Spider-Man instead negotiates with them and signs up to become the Fantastic Fantastic Five. Because of his official endorsement by Reed Richards, J. Jonah Jameson drops his crusade, and the public embraces the wall crawler. Not only that, but Peter is able to bring in money to help out Aunt May, and villains who gave him trouble in the past are no match for the Fantastic Five. Spider-Man's inclusion in the team, however, causes a problem. Reed Richards, being the socially aloof person he is, starts to ignore his wife, the Invisible Woman, more and more, to the point where she decides to leave the team and join Namor. Frankly, we're surprised it took her this long. Let's be glad that Spidey didn't go with the team in the main continuity, or else he would have never gotten a good film. Ever.
Hey, you guys. No playing in the streets.
Yes, Mr. Spider-Man.
See ya.
The Spider. The Exiles is a Marvel group of heroes that virtually nobody outside of the hardcore comics community knows about. They're a group of heroes from different universes going around and correcting anomalies. Think Dragon Ball Xenoverse's Time Patrollers and you got the idea. Well, wouldn't you know, but in this series, we get a look at Peter Parker of Earth 15. In this reality, Parker's a sociopathic mass murderer who fully merged with the Carnage symbiote. He still retains his sense of humor, except now he slices people before ever helping anyone. Oops. On his Earth, he's a part of a group known as Weapon X, headed by Sabretooth. This group is similar to the Exiles, except that they have no qualms about doing whatever it takes to get things done, including killing, which the Spider is happy to do. This Spider-Man even joins up with an evil version of Hyperion, basically a Marvel clone of Superman, to take over the world. Too bad for him, he meets his end when Firestar incinerates him inside of a prison. Deadpool must be relieved that his competition is dead.
Then perhaps it would be more original if I simply remain silent while watching you splat!
Goblin Parker. The Green Goblin has done a lot of things to Peter Parker over the years. From throwing his girlfriends off of bridges and stealing his recently born children, Norman Osborn is a horrendous person. The last thing we could see Peter Parker do is become a goblin himself. Oh wait. During the Spider-Verse event from a couple of years back, we were introduced to a gigantic new cast of spider beings. One of the more interesting ones was a Peter Parker who couldn't handle losing his Gwen Stacy. The only sane response for him was to kill the Green Goblin and then turn into the Goblin. That's it. We guess Parker's creativity died the same time Gwen did. At some point during the storyline, Peter comes into contact with Spider-Gwen. Upon seeing his beloved, albeit an alternate universe version of her, he breaks down and cries in her arms, angry at himself that he couldn't save her. While he doesn't join her ranks to save every Spider-Man in existence, he does sacrifice himself in order to save her from the big bads of that storyline, the Inheritors. Even if he spent the past few years of his life being a villain, this universe's Peter Parker at least died saving his love one final time.
I knew you'd come back.
Yeah, thanks for stepping up for me. You're the bravest kid I've ever seen.
MC2 Peter Parker. Spider-Man Renew Your Vows has been a breath of fresh air for longtime fans of the character. Newer fans thought that Marvel had already done an alternate universe where Spider-Man was a parent and had a daughter with Mary Jane who possessed superpowers. Enter Marvel's Spider-Girl. In this universe, Peter Parker manages to rescue his infant daughter from the clutches of the Green Goblin in a climactic final battle. Though he loses a leg in the fight, he finally succeeds in putting down the Goblin for good. However, he retires from the Spider-Man persona and eventually hands down the reins to his daughter, May Parker. We say eventually because after the life he's lived as the wall crawler, Peter is very much against having his daughter go down the same life he did. Working in the Midtown South police station as a scientist, Peter can only hold back his daughter for so long. With great power comes great responsibility after all. Parker eventually accepts that his daughter is a superhero and even puts on the old costume from time to time to help her out. He even briefly considers going back full-time, although his prosthetic leg makes him a liability and he gives it up. Also, he has a goatee in this universe. If you ever wanted a bearded Spidey, you got it.
Hand her over!
Of course.
Easy now. Butterfingers.
SpiderSide. With a name like that, you just know that this is clearly a 90s comic book character. Nobody with a name that edgy is going to be in the golden age. Birthed in the monstrosity known as Spider-Man's Clone Saga, SpiderSide is an evil, perfect clone of Peter Parker created by the Jackal, Miles Warren. As his name suggests, this clone loves to kill and serve his master by any means necessary. In fact, being a quote-unquote perfect clone, he is much more powerful than the Spider-Man we know and love. That would be because of his control over his his molecular structure. Basically, he can morph his body into whatever he wants. He can do that, and the best he could come up with was hammers and spikes. This is why 90s comics were so stupid, people. We didn't even get to the worst about this. As we said, he has control over his molecular structure. You would think that with something like that, he would be near impossible for Spidey to defeat. Oh, but don't you worry. The heroes have a plan to beat him, and it's dropping him off a building, despite the fact that he's shown that he could shapeshift into water.
I'm ready to reveal my true identity as not Parker! Hey, webhead walking here!
3 Davo Dom. For those of you who don't speak Turkish, that means 3 giant men. It also means that we're talking about one of the most insane versions of Spider-Man ever conceived. This 1973 classic stars famed Mexican luchador El Santo, Captain America, and Spider-Man. Wow, what a score! Oh, but of course these characters are all unlicensed versions of them. Even if they're not official, Captain America and El Santo are depicted somewhat faithfully. Spider-Man, however, doesn't get off so easy. Here his costume is red and green with openings for the eyes. He runs a gang and delights in torture and murder of his opponents. And there's some creative stuff in here, like putting a guinea pig in a tube where the only exit is through a man's face. Or how about burying somebody up to their neck in sand and then using a boat propeller to give them the worst facial ever. And he does all of this without any of his powers from the comics. Jesus, imagine if he did have those? Although he does seem to come back from the dead several times in the movies. Oh dear lord, is this movie the original Clone Saga?
Landings were so different.
Electric Company Spider-Man. Step aside, Elmo. Out of the way, Big Bird. While you might be respected educational icons, we have one that would whip you all with one arm tied behind his back. Spider-Man. We're guessing that 99% of viewers aren't old enough to remember this show, but the Electric Company television show was considered to be the slightly edgier version of Sesame Street. At some point during the show's run, a silent Spider-Man appeared in sketches fighting legendary villains like the Spoiler, and the Sack, and the Wall. Wait, is Donald Trump commissioning supervillains to battle Spidey? He's stepping on Jameson's toes! This version of Peter Parker has no time for stopping murderous lunatics like the Green Goblin. Instead, he appears at Mets games in full costume, stopping the Wall from giving the away team the victory. Truly, this isn't the hero we deserve, but the one that we needed. Unfortunately for viewers, Spidey only appeared on the show for about 3 years. What are some other superheroes that'd be good in this role? Batman? As long as it's not with the Christian Bale voice, that could work. Hulk? No, that would probably not end well.
Show us your face!
Prove you're not Parker.
Come on, just because I'm not Parker doesn't mean I'll reveal who I am. It's called a secret identity.
Well, there you have it. That's it for our list. Which version of Spider-Man here would you want to learn more about? Which were your favorite? Are there any hidden gems of Spider-Man that you know of and that we might have missed? While you're here, don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to CBR for more awesome content. Thanks for watching, true believers!